This video essay will cover several topics. Please watch until the end and let us know what else you would like us to discuss in a video essay. Part 1. Unraveling the web of fake news, crisis actors, and controlled media. Part 2. The Great Replacement Theory and its implications on American politics. Part 3. The reality of false flag events. A tool for controlled opposition. Part 4. Controlled opposition. Theory, practice, and modern examples. Part 1. In an age where information is abundant and easily accessible, the prevalence of fake news and manipulated media has become a growing concern. The rise of the internet and social media platforms has provided a breeding ground for misinformation, allowing false narratives to spread like wildfire, especially when the mainstream media is the source of official news that has been vetted, corrected, or edited after events occur to give official standing and narratives. One example of that is the citywide riots, where a police station is burned to the ground, police cars vandalized and set on fire, and the protest is officially rubber-stamped. Mostly peaceful protests, we are told. BS does not seem to be in short supply from official sources. Another example is when the media live streams an event from prominent political people, and what they say is captured live. Yet the officials involved reserves the right to correct what is said after the fact. Never before has so much control been exerted over the flow of information. Yet when anyone questions the official statements, it is also called fake news. This article delves into the concept of fake news, crisis actors, and controlled media, providing examples and resources to help create a better understanding of this phenomenon. Leave a comment, like, comment, and subscribe. Support us at jl310defense.com. Share this video with others to help support us. Section 1. Understanding fake news. Fake news refers to fabricated stories designed to deceive and manipulate the public. It can take various forms, including fabricated news articles, manipulated images, and misleading headlines. The rise of social media has made it easier for fake news to spread, as users are more likely to share content without verifying its accuracy. Resources. Fake News. Understanding Media and Information in the Digital Age by Melissa Zimdars and Kembrew McLeod. Fake News, Propaganda, and Plain Old Lies. How to Find Trustworthy Information in the Digital Age by Donald A. Barclay. Section 2. Crisis actors and the role of theatre in news. Crisis actors are individuals hired to portray victims, witnesses, or other roles in a simulated crisis scenario. They are often used in emergency training exercises and simulations to provide a realistic environment for first responders. However, some theorists believe that crisis actors are also employed by the media to stage events and manipulate public opinion. Resources. Crisis Actors. The Unseen Stars of the News by Peter Bradshaw. The Role of Theatre in News and Media by Sarah J. Jackson and Brooke Foucault-Wells. Section 3. Controlled Media and the Influence of News Outlets. Controlled media refers to the manipulation of news and information by government, corporate, or other entities to shape public opinion. This can manifest through various means, including censorship, propaganda, and the dissemination of false or misleading information. Resources. Manufacturing Consent. The Political Economy of the Mass Media by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky. The Media Monopoly by Ben H. Bagdikian. Section 4. Examining specific cases of fake news and controlled media to better understand the impact of fake news, crisis actors, and controlled media. Let us examine a few examples of these phenomena in action. Example 1. The Ukraine church debris during the conflict in Ukraine. A video surfaced showing individuals clearing debris from a bombed church. The debris appeared to be made of foam rather than concrete or stone, as it was easily lifted up as if it was nothing in weight. This led some to question the authenticity of the scene, suggesting that it may have been staged as a propaganda effort. Resources: video of Ukraine church debris, Ukraine conflict and the role of propaganda. Example 2. Street scenes in Ukraine. Another example of potential media manipulation in Ukraine involves images and videos of cars overturned in the streets, with little or no damage to nearby buildings. In one instance, a window near an overturned car appears to be intact, despite the vehemence of the incident. Resources: video of cars in Ukraine, the role of visual propaganda in conflict. Example 3. Repeating crisis actors. Numerous instances of the same actors appearing at multiple crisis events have been documented. These actors can be seen crying, screaming, or otherwise reacting to the events unfolding around them. In some cases, the same individual appears to have been killed or injured at multiple locations, with images circulating of them on stretchers at different sites. And some of the dead seem to get up at the end of a scene or begin moving around. The strangeness of an official video from a war zone, yet the dead seem to rise up and the injured are always the same people. Resources: compilation of repeating crisis actors, the psychology of mass hysteria. Example 4. Manipulated Biden video. During the 2020 US presidential campaign, a video of Joe Biden speaking with a microphone glitch was widely circulated. The glitch appeared to show grass from the White House lawn clipping through his feet and legs. This led some to question the authenticity of the video and whether it had been manipulated for political purposes. Resources: video of Biden microphone glitch, the rise of deepfake technology. The examples discussed in this article serve as a reminder of the importance of critically examining the news and information we consume. While it is essential to maintain a healthy skepticism, it is equally important not to dismiss all news as fake or manipulated. By staying informed and seeking out diverse perspectives, we can better navigate the complex landscape of modern media. Disclaimer: the purpose of this article is to examine the potential for fake news, crisis actors, and controlled media, rather than to assert any specific claims or biases. The examples provided are intended for illustrative purposes and should not be taken as definitive evidence of media manipulation. Section 5. Additional examples of fake news and controlled media. Example 5. The Gulf of Tonkin incident. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was a pivotal moment in the escalation of the Vietnam War. In August 1964, the US government claimed that North Vietnamese torpedo boats had attacked American destroyers in international waters. This event led to the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which granted President Lyndon B. Johnson the authority to wage war in Vietnam without a formal declaration. However, it was later revealed that the alleged attack was either greatly exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Resources: The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. The Truth About Tonkin by Joseph C. Gooden. Example 6. The Iraq War and Weapons of Mass Destruction. In the lead-up to the 2003 Iraq War, the US government, under President George W. Bush, claimed that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, and posed an imminent threat to national security. This assertion was used to justify the invasion of Iraq. However, no WMDs were ever found, and it was later revealed that the intelligence used to support the claim was flawed and, in some cases, deliberately manipulated. Resources: Iraq and Weapons of Mass Destruction by the Central Intelligence Agency. The Iraq War, a historical, political and military analysis by Alistair Finlan. Example 7. The Syrian chemical weapons attack in April 2017. A chemical weapons attack occurred in the Syrian town of Khan Sheikhoun. The attack resulted in the deaths of at least 70 people and was widely attributed to the Syrian government. In response, the United States launched a missile strike against a Syrian airbase. However, some have questioned the authenticity of the attack, suggesting that it may have been staged to justify military intervention. Resources: Khan Sheikhoun chemical attack. The Khan Sheikhoun chemical attack Assessment of the Evidence by Theodore A. Postol and Martin J. Pradilla. Example 8. The Covington Catholic High School controversy. In January 2019, a video went viral showing a confrontation between a group of students from Covington Catholic High School and a Native American activist named Nathan Phillips. The video was initially portrayed as an incident of racial harassment, with the students being accused of intimidating and disrespecting Phillips. However, subsequent footage revealed a more complex situation, with the students appearing to be the victims of harassment themselves. Resources: The Covington Catholic High School Controversy by Sabrina Tavernise and Richard Fawcett. The Fuller Picture of the Covington Catholic Altercation by Emily S. Rube and Christina Karen. Section 6. Additional examples of fake news and controlled media. Example 9. The Russian election interference in 2016. It was revealed that the Russian government had conducted a campaign to interfere with the US presidential election, using tactics such as hacking, disinformation, and social media manipulation. While the extent and impact of this interference are still debated, it demonstrates the potential for foreign governments to manipulate the news and information landscape. Resources: Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in Recent US Elections by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. The Plot to Subvert an Election by David Korn and Michael Isikoff. Example 10. The Flint Water Crisis in 2014. The city of Flint, Michigan, switched its water source to the Flint River in an effort to save money. This decision led to a public health crisis, as the water was contaminated with lead and other pollutants. While the crisis was eventually acknowledged and addressed, it highlights the potential for negligence and misinformation in the handling of public health issues. Resources: Flint Water Crisis, Fast Facts by CNN, The Poison City, Flint's Water and the American Urban Tragedy by Anna Clark. Example 11. The COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has been accompanied by a surge of misinformation and conspiracy theories, ranging from the origins of the virus to the efficacy of vaccines. This has led to confusion and skepticism among the public, highlighting the challenges of navigating a rapidly evolving and complex news landscape. Resources: COVID-19 Dashboard by the World Health Organization Plandemic. The Hidden Agenda Behind the COVID-19 Pandemic by Joe Lauria and Elizabeth Voss. Example 12. The Jeffrey Epstein Scandal. The Jeffrey Epstein scandal involved a wealthy financier who was accused of sexually abusing underage girls and trafficking them to powerful individuals. The case raised questions about the extent of the abuse and the potential involvement of high-profile figures, as well as concerns about the media's coverage of the story. Resources: The Jeffrey Epstein Case by Benjamin Weiser and Emily Palmer. Filthy Rich. The Jeffrey Epstein Story by James Patterson and John Connolly. Section 7. The untrustworthiness of mainstream media. The mainstream media has faced increasing scrutiny in recent years, with some critics arguing that it is untrustworthy and biased. This skepticism is fueled by a number of factors, including financial interests. Many mainstream media outlets are owned by large corporations, which may have financial interests in promoting certain narratives or suppressing others. This can lead to a lack of objectivity and the distortion of facts to fit a particular agenda. Political biases. Journalists and news organizations may have their own political beliefs, which can influence the way they report on certain issues. This can result in the selective presentation of facts or the omission of important information that contradicts their views. Sensationalism. In an effort to attract viewers and generate revenue, some media outlets may prioritize sensational or provocative stories over more nuanced and accurate reporting. This can lead to the distortion of facts and the creation of false narratives. Lack of fact-checking. With the increasing pressure to publish news quickly, some media outlets may prioritize speed over accuracy, leading to the dissemination of false or misleading information. Section 8. The importance of investigating alternative news sources. Given the potential for mainstream media to be untrustworthy, it is crucial to seek out alternative news sources to gain a more comprehensive understanding of current events. Some strategies for doing so include diversifying news consumption. By consuming news from a variety of sources with different perspectives, it becomes easier to identify biases and contradictions, and to form a more balanced understanding of the issues. Fact-checking. When encountering a news story, it is essential to verify the information presented by cross-referencing it with other sources and fact-checking databases. Seeking expert opinions. By consulting experts in relevant fields, it is possible to gain a more nuanced and accurate understanding of complex issues. Maintaining a critical mindset. It is essential to approach all news with a healthy skepticism, questioning the motivations and biases of the sources, and seeking out alternative perspectives. Conclusion: in an age of information overload and media manipulation, it is more important than ever to be vigilant and discerning in our consumption of news. By investigating alternative sources, fact-checking information, and maintaining a critical mindset, we can better navigate the complex landscape of modern media and form a more accurate understanding of the world around us. It is crucial to not react to events, news, or incidents with emotion, but rather to investigate or check trustworthy alternative news sources. This approach will enable us to make informed decisions and engage in meaningful discussions about the issues that shape our world. Part 2. The Great Replacement Theory and its implications on American politics. In recent years, the idea of the Great Replacement Theory has gained traction in political discourse, particularly among conservative circles in the United States. This theory posits that the ruling Democratic Party, the president, and other powerful individuals are actively working to shift the population count, import illegal immigrants, and change the demographic landscape in order to maintain political control. This article examines the legitimacy of these claims, the legal implications of such actions, and the potential recourse for the American public. The Great Replacement Theory. Fact or fiction? The Great Replacement Theory is a conspiracy theory that suggests the ruling political party is intentionally changing the demographic makeup of the United States to consolidate power. Proponents of this theory argue that the Democratic Party is orchestrating mass immigration, particularly from non-European countries, to dilute the political influence of the native-born population. However, there is little evidence to support these claims. The U.S. Census Bureau, an independent agency responsible for conducting the national census, operates under strict guidelines and is overseen by the U.S. Department of Commerce. The Bureau is required to follow rigorous protocols to ensure the accuracy and integrity of its data. Furthermore, the Constitution grants Congress the authority to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. Article I, Section 8, Clause 4, not individual politicians or parties. Update: https://www.thegatewaypundit.com/2024/6/conspiracy. No more explosive undercover footage reveals Biden's legal implications of such actions if the ruling political party were to engage in the manipulation of population counts or the illegal importation of immigrants. Such actions would be in direct violation of U.S. law. The Immigration and Nationality Act, INA, governs immigration to the United States and outlines the legal pathways for individuals to enter the country. Violations of the INA can lead to criminal charges and deportation for those involved in illegal immigration activities. Additionally, any attempts to manipulate population counts for political gain would likely be met with legal challenges. The U.S. Constitution guarantees equal representation for all citizens, as established by the 14th Amendment. Any action taken to undermine this principle could be subject to legal action under the Constitution and federal law. Public recourse against the Great Replacement. If the American public were to become aware of any attempts to manipulate population counts or engage in illegal immigration activities for political gain, there are several avenues for recourse. First, citizens can exercise their right to vote and support candidates who are committed to upholding the rule of law and protecting the rights of all Americans. By participating in the democratic process, the public can help ensure that those in power are held accountable for their actions. Second, individuals can report suspected violations of immigration law to the appropriate authorities, such as the Department of Homeland Security or the Federal Bureau of Investigation. By reporting these incidents, citizens can help to ensure that the rule of law is upheld and that those responsible for illegal activities are brought to justice. The Great Replacement Theory is a conspiracy theory that lacks substantial evidence and undermines the democratic principles upon which the United States is founded. While the ruling political party, the president, and other powerful individuals do not have the legal right to manipulate population counts or engage in illegal immigration activities for political gain, the American public has several avenues for recourse should such actions occur. By exercising their right to vote, reporting suspected violations of immigration law, and supporting candidates who uphold the rule of law, citizens can help to protect the democratic principles that have made the United States a beacon of freedom and opportunity for generations. Part 3. The reality of false flag events, a tool for controlled opposition. In the realm of political events and conspiracies, the term false flag has become increasingly prevalent. False flag events refer to covert operations designed to deceive the public by blaming a political or military action on a rival entity. These incidents often serve as a catalyst for a preconceived agenda, providing a scapegoat for the orchestrators to manipulate public opinion and enact policy changes. This article aims to explore the reality of false flag events and their role in controlled opposition, presenting evidence and examples from various historical instances. Section 1. Understanding false flag events. 1.1 Definition and Concept. A false flag event is a covert operation carried out by a government or organization under the guise of another entity. The primary objective of such operations is to deceive the public and create a pretext for taking specific actions, such as launching military campaigns, implementing new legislation, or suppressing opposition movements. False flag events can be orchestrated domestically or internationally, targeting both citizens and foreign nations. 1.2 Historical examples. Throughout history, numerous incidents have been accused of being false flag events. Some notable examples include the Gulf of Tonkin Incident, 1964. This event, which escalated the Vietnam War, involved 2 reported attacks on US Navy ships by North Vietnamese forces. However, subsequent investigations revealed that the second attack may have never occurred, and the first attack was likely a misunderstanding. This incident ultimately led to the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, giving President Lyndon B. Johnson authorization to use military force in Vietnam. Operation Northwoods, 1962. This was a proposed false flag operation by the US Department of Defense to justify a war against Cuba. The plan involved staging various acts of terrorism, such as hijacking planes and sinking ships, and blaming them on Fidel Castro's regime. The operation was ultimately rejected by President John F. Kennedy. The Reichstag Fire, 1933. This event, which occurred in Nazi Germany, involved the burning of the Reichstag building, the German parliament. Adolf Hitler's government blamed the arson on the communist movement, using the incident as a pretext to pass the Enabling Act, which granted Hitler dictatorial powers. Section 2. Controlled opposition. 2.1 Definition and Concept. Controlled opposition is a strategy employed by governments or organizations to create the illusion of opposition or dissent, while in reality, the opposition is controlled or influenced by the entity it appears to oppose. This tactic allows the orchestrators to manipulate public opinion, steer political discourse, and discredit genuine opposition movements. 2.2 Examples of controlled opposition. Controlled opposition has been employed in various political contexts throughout history. Some examples include COINTELPRO, 1956 to 1971. The Counterintelligence Program was a series of covert operations conducted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, in the United States. The program aimed to disrupt, discredit, and neutralize political dissidents and organizations, including the American Civil Rights Movement and anti-Vietnam War activists. The Green Scare, 1990s present. This term refers to the US government's crackdown on radical environmental and animal rights movements, often using false flag events and infiltration tactics to discredit and dismantle these groups. The Russian anti-Trump protests, 2011 to 2012. During this period, the Russian government allegedly sponsored and controlled opposition protests against then-President Dmitry Medvedev and Prime Minister Vladimir Putin. These protests were used to manipulate public opinion, discredit genuine dissent, and maintain control over the political narrative. Section 3. The connection between false flag events and controlled opposition. 3.1. Creating a pretext for action. False flag events serve as a catalyst for controlled opposition by providing a scapegoat and a pretext for the orchestrators to enact policy changes or suppress dissent. By blaming a rival entity for an attack or incident, governments can rally public support and justify aggressive actions against the perceived threat. 3.2. Manipulating public opinion. False flag events can manipulate public opinion by creating fear, outrage, and a sense of urgency. This emotional response can be exploited to garner support for specific policies, military actions, or the suppression of opposition movements. By controlling the narrative surrounding these events, governments can steer public discourse and shape the perception of the alleged attacker or opposition group. 3.3. Discrediting genuine opposition by orchestrating false flag events and controlled opposition. Governments can discredit genuine dissent and opposition movements. When a group is accused of perpetrating a false flag attack or engaging in controlled opposition, it loses credibility and support, allowing the orchestrators to maintain control over the political narrative and suppress alternative viewpoints. Section 4. Analyzing historical connections between false flag events and controlled opposition. 4.1. The 9/11 attacks and the War on Terror. The September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States have been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories, with some suggesting that the event was a false flag operation. Regardless of the validity of these claims, the 9/11 attacks served as a catalyst for the War on Terror, which led to the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, the Patriot Act, and increased surveillance and security measures. 4. Point to the Syrian civil war and chemical weapons. During the Syrian civil war, several chemical weapons attacks have been attributed to the Syrian government, leading to international condemnation and calls for military intervention. Some analysts have questioned the authenticity of these attacks, suggesting that they may have been false flag events orchestrated by opposition forces or external actors seeking to manipulate public opinion and justify intervention in the conflict. 4.3. The COVID-19 pandemic and global response. The COVID-19 pandemic has been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories, with some suggesting that the virus was engineered or intentionally released. While the origins of the virus remain uncertain, the pandemic has been used to justify unprecedented policy changes, such as lockdowns, vaccine mandates, and increased surveillance. Some argue that the pandemic has been exploited to manipulate public opinion and suppress dissent, creating a climate of fear and control. False flag events and controlled opposition are interconnected strategies employed by governments and organizations to manipulate public opinion, steer political discourse, and suppress dissent. While the authenticity of specific false flag events may be debatable, their role in controlled opposition cannot be ignored. By understanding the mechanisms behind these tactics, individuals can better discern the intentions and agendas driving political events and make informed decisions about their beliefs and actions. Part 4. Controlled opposition. Theory, practice, and modern examples. Controlled opposition, also known as the strategy of the lesser evil, is a political tactic used by governments, corporations, and other powerful entities to manipulate public opinion and control the political narrative. This strategy involves creating or supporting opposition groups or candidates that are perceived as genuine alternatives to the ruling establishment, but are, in reality, controlled or influenced by the same establishment. By doing so, the ruling powers can maintain control over the political landscape and shape public discourse to suit their interests. In this article, we will explore the concept of controlled opposition, its historical roots, and its modern manifestations. We will also examine several case studies of controlled opposition in action and discuss the implications of this strategy for democracy and civil liberties. The theory and practice of controlled opposition. The idea of controlled opposition can be traced back to the writings of 19th century Russian revolutionary and political philosopher Mikhail Bakunin. In his work, Statism and Anarchy, Bakunin argued that the ruling classes often employ controlled opposition as a means of maintaining their power and suppressing dissent. They, the ruling classes, invented two entirely different modes of government, which are designed to amuse and, if possible, to degrade the people so that they might profit at the expense of the people. These two methods are the government of the people by the people's supposed representatives, democracy, and the government of the people by the people's supposed protectors, dictatorship. Bakunin, 1873. In modern times, the concept of controlled opposition has been popularized by political theorists and whistleblowers, such as Alex Jones, who have alleged that many of the world's most prominent opposition figures and movements are, in fact, controlled by the same powers they claim to oppose. The practice of controlled opposition involves several key elements: the creation or support of opposition groups or candidates that appear to be genuine alternatives to the ruling establishment, the use of these controlled opposition groups to shape public discourse and steer the political narrative in a direction that benefits the ruling powers, the use of controlled opposition groups to discredit or marginalize genuine dissent and opposition movements. Examples of controlled opposition in history. Throughout history, there have been numerous examples of controlled opposition being used to manipulate public opinion and maintain political control. Some of the most notable examples include the French Revolution. During the French Revolution, the ruling powers created and supported various opposition groups, such as the Jacobins, to steer the revolutionary movement in a direction that suited their interests. These controlled opposition groups ultimately led to the rise of Napoleon Bonaparte and the establishment of a new authoritarian regime, the Russian Revolution. In the lead-up to the Russian Revolution, the ruling powers supported various opposition groups, such as the Bolsheviks, to manipulate the revolutionary movement and maintain control over the country. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, ultimately seized power and established a new authoritarian regime. The United States. In the United States, there have been numerous allegations of controlled opposition being used to manipulate public opinion and maintain political control. For example, some theorists have argued that the Democratic and Republican parties are both controlled by the same powerful elites, with each party serving as a form of controlled opposition to the other. Modern examples of controlled opposition in the modern era. The practice of controlled opposition has become increasingly sophisticated and widespread. Some of the most prominent examples of controlled opposition in recent years include the Occupy Wall Street movement. Some theorists have argued that the Occupy Wall Street movement, which emerged in 2011 as a protest against economic inequality and corporate greed, was a form of controlled opposition designed to co-opt and neutralize genuine dissent. The Tea Party movement. Similarly, some theorists have argued that the Tea Party movement, which emerged in 2009 as a conservative protest against government spending and taxation, was a form of controlled opposition designed to steer public opinion in a direction that benefited the ruling establishment. The Arab Spring, a series of pro-democracy uprisings that swept across the Middle East and North Africa in 2010 and 2011, has also been cited as an example of controlled opposition. Some theorists argue that the uprisings were orchestrated by Western powers as a means of toppling unfriendly regimes and installing more compliant governments. Implications of controlled opposition for democracy and civil liberties. The practice of controlled opposition has significant implications for democracy and civil liberties. By manipulating public opinion and suppressing genuine dissent, controlled opposition undermines the principles of free speech, free assembly, and democratic governance. It also serves to further entrench the power of ruling elites and perpetuate systems of inequality and injustice. To counter the threat of controlled opposition, it is essential for citizens to remain vigilant and critically engaged in the political process. This involves questioning the motives and allegiances of opposition groups and candidates, seeking out alternative sources of information and analysis, supporting genuine dissent and opposition movements, participating in grassroots activism and community organizing. Controlled opposition is a powerful and insidious political tactic that has been used throughout history to manipulate public opinion and maintain political control. By understanding the theory and practice of controlled opposition and examining its modern manifestations, we can better equip ourselves to resist its influence and protect our democratic rights and liberties. References: Bakunin, M. 1873, Statism and Anarchy. Retrieved from Marxist.org, Statism, Anarchy, HTM. Jones, A. 2010. The Alex Jones Show. Retrieved from infos.com/show. Additional examples of controlled opposition. The Black Lives Matter movement. Some theorists have argued that the Black Lives Matter movement, which emerged in response to police brutality and systemic racism, has been co-opted by corporate and political interests. They argue that the movement has been used to steer public opinion in a direction that benefits the ruling establishment and to discredit genuine anti-racist activism. The Russian interference in the 2016 US presidential election. During the 2016 US presidential election, the Russian government was accused of using controlled opposition tactics to manipulate public opinion and influence the outcome of the election. This included the use of social media trolls and bots to spread disinformation and sow discord among the American public. The European Union. Some theorists have argued that the European Union is a form of controlled opposition designed to maintain the power of European elites and suppress genuine dissent. They argue that the EU has been used to steer public opinion in a direction that benefits the ruling establishment and to discredit genuine anti-capitalist and anti-globalization movements. Implications of controlled opposition for democracy and civil liberties. The practice of controlled opposition has significant implications for democracy and civil liberties. By manipulating public opinion and suppressing genuine dissent, controlled opposition undermines the principles of free speech, free assembly, and democratic governance. It also serves to further entrench the power of ruling elites and perpetuate systems of inequality and injustice. To counter the threat of controlled opposition, it is essential for citizens to remain vigilant and critically engaged in the political process. This involves questioning the motives and allegiances of opposition groups and candidates, seeking out alternative sources of information and analysis, supporting genuine dissent and opposition movements, participating in grassroots activism and community organizing. Controlled opposition is a powerful and insidious political tactic that has been used throughout history to manipulate public opinion and maintain political control. By understanding the theory and practice of controlled opposition and examining its modern manifestations, we can better equip ourselves to resist its influence and protect our democratic rights and liberties. References: Bakunin, M. 1873. Statism and Anarchy. Retrieved from Marxists. org/reference/archive/Bakunin/works/1873 Anarchy. Hetia. Jones, A. 2010. The Alex Jones Show. Retrieved from infowars.com/show/The Guardian. 2016. Black Lives Matter. The hashtag that became a movement. Retrieved from theguardian.com. Black Lives Matter, what it's achieved. The New York Times. 2018. Russian trolls were at it again before midterms. Facebook says. Retrieved from nytimes.com. Russian trolls, midterm elections. HTML. The Intercept. 2016. The European Union is a dictatorship built on the ashes of democracies. Retrieved from theintercept.com. The European Union is a dictatorship built on the ashes of democracies. Controlled opposition. A deep dive into its tactics and implications. Introduction. Controlled opposition, also known as the strategy of the lesser evil, is a powerful political tactic used by governments, corporations, and other influential entities to manipulate public opinion and control the political narrative. This strategy involves creating or supporting opposition groups or candidates that are perceived as genuine alternatives to the ruling establishment, but are, in reality, controlled or influenced by the same establishment. By doing so, the ruling powers can maintain control over the political landscape and shape public discourse to suit their interests. In this article, we will explore the concept of controlled opposition, its historical roots, and its modern manifestations. We will also examine several case studies of controlled opposition in action and discuss the implications of this strategy for democracy. Understanding controlled opposition. The concept of controlled opposition can be traced back to the writings of 19th century anarchist Mikhail Bakunin, who argued that revolutionary movements could be co-opted by the ruling class to serve their interests. Bakunin believed that genuine revolutionaries should remain vigilant and resist the temptation to collaborate with or endorse opposition groups that were, in reality, controlled by the ruling establishment. In the modern era, controlled opposition has become a ubiquitous feature of political life, with governments, corporations, and other powerful entities using a variety of tactics to manipulate public opinion and control the political narrative. These tactics include creating or supporting opposition groups or candidates that are perceived as genuine alternatives to the ruling establishment, but are, in reality, controlled or influenced by the same establishment. Using the media to promote a particular narrative or perspective, often by portraying opposition groups or candidates in a negative light, or by presenting the ruling establishment as the only viable alternative. Engaging in covert operations, such as propaganda campaigns, disinformation, and PSYOPs, to manipulate public opinion and discredit opposition movements. Using front groups and astroturfing to create the illusion of grassroots support for the ruling establishment or opposition groups that are, in reality, controlled by the same establishment. Examples of controlled opposition: the Black Lives Matter movement. Some theorists have argued that the Black Lives Matter movement, which emerged in response to police brutality and systemic racism, has been co-opted by corporate and political interests. They argue that the movement has been used to steer public opinion in a direction that benefits the ruling establishment and to discredit genuine anti-racist activism. The Russian interference in the 2016 US presidential election. During the 2016 US presidential election, the Russian government was accused of using controlled opposition tactics to manipulate public opinion and influence the outcome of the election. This included the use of social media trolls and bots to spread disinformation and sow discord among the American public. The European Union. Some theorists have argued that the European Union is a form of controlled opposition designed to maintain the power of European elites and suppress genuine dissent. They argue that the EU has been used to steer public opinion in a direction that benefits the ruling establishment and to discredit genuine anti-capitalist and anti-globalization movements. Implications of controlled opposition for democracy and civil liberties. The practice of controlled opposition has significant implications for democracy and civil liberties. By manipulating public opinion and suppressing genuine dissent, controlled opposition undermines the principles of free speech, free assembly, and democratic governance. It also serves to further entrench the power of ruling elites and perpetuate systems of inequality and injustice. To counter the threat of controlled opposition, it is essential for citizens to remain vigilant and critically engaged in the political process. This involves questioning the motives and allegiances of opposition groups and candidates, seeking out alternative sources of information and analysis, supporting genuine dissent and opposition movements, participating in grassroots activism and community organizing. Controlled opposition is a powerful and insidious political tactic that has been used throughout history to manipulate public opinion and maintain political control. By understanding the theory and practice of controlled opposition and examining its modern manifestations, we can better equip ourselves to resist its influence and protect our democratic rights and liberties. References: Bakunin, M. 1873, Statism and Anarchy, retrieved from Marxist.org, Statism Anarchy, Hetiem. Jones, A. 2010. The Alex Jones Show, retrieved from infos.com/show. The Guardian. 2016. Black Lives Matter. The hashtag that became a movement. Retrieved from TheGuardian.com. Black Lives Matter, What It's Achieved. The New York Times. 2018. Russian trolls were at it again before midterms, Facebook says. Retrieved from NightTimes.com. Russian trolls midterm elections. HTML. The Intercept. 2016. The European Union is a dictatorship built on the ashes of democracies. Retrieved from Theintercept.com. The European Union is a dictatorship built on the ashes of democracies. The role of controlled opposition in shaping public opinion. One of the primary ways in which controlled opposition is used to manipulate public opinion is by creating a false dichotomy between the ruling establishment and the opposition. This tactic involves presenting the opposition as the only viable alternative to the ruling establishment, while simultaneously portraying the opposition in a negative light or as a lesser evil. By doing so, the ruling powers can convince the public that there is no viable alternative to their rule, and that any attempt to challenge their authority would be futile or even dangerous. This strategy can be seen in the portrayal of political candidates and opposition groups in the media. For example, during election campaigns, the media often focuses on the perceived flaws and weaknesses of opposition candidates, while simultaneously portraying the ruling establishment as the only viable option for stability and security. This creates the illusion that the opposition is not a genuine alternative to the ruling establishment, and that any attempt to challenge the status quo would be disastrous for the country. Another way in which controlled opposition is used to manipulate public opinion is by creating a narrative that supports the interests of the ruling establishment. This involves using the media to promote a particular perspective or ideology, often by portraying opposition groups or candidates in a negative light, or by presenting the ruling establishment as the only viable alternative. This tactic is often used to discredit opposition movements and to create the illusion that there is no viable alternative to the ruling establishment. For example, during the Cold War, the United States government used propaganda and disinformation to promote the idea that communism was a threat to democracy and freedom. This narrative was used to justify the US government's aggressive foreign policy and to discredit opposition movements that sought to challenge American hegemony. By portraying communism as a threat to democracy and freedom, the US government was able to maintain control over the political narrative and shape public opinion to suit its interests. The implications of controlled opposition for democracy and civil liberties. The practice of controlled opposition has significant implications for democracy and civil liberties. By manipulating public opinion and suppressing genuine dissent, controlled opposition undermines the principles of free speech, free assembly, and democratic governance. It also serves to further entrench the power of ruling elites and perpetuate systems of inequality and injustice. One of the primary ways in which controlled opposition undermines democracy is by suppressing genuine dissent and opposition movements. By creating the illusion that there is no viable alternative to the ruling establishment, controlled opposition can discourage citizens from participating in the political process and engaging in grassroots activism. This can lead to a sense of apathy and disengagement among the public, which can further entrench the power of the ruling establishment and undermine the legitimacy of democratic institutions. Additionally, controlled opposition can create a false sense of consensus among the public, which can be used to justify the policies and actions of the ruling establishment. By portraying opposition groups and candidates in a negative light or as a lesser evil, controlled opposition can create the illusion that there is widespread support for the policies and actions of the ruling establishment. This can be used to justify the use of force, censorship, and other forms of repression to suppress dissent and maintain political control. To counter the threat of controlled opposition, it is essential for citizens to remain vigilant and critically engaged in the political process. This involves questioning the motives and allegiances of opposition groups and candidates, seeking out alternative sources of information and analysis, supporting genuine dissent and opposition movements, and participating in grassroots activism and community organizing. Controlled opposition is a powerful and insidious political tactic that has been used throughout history to manipulate public opinion and maintain political control. By understanding the theory and practice of controlled opposition and examining its modern manifestations, we can better equip ourselves to resist its influence and protect our democratic rights and liberties. By remaining vigilant and critically engaged in the political process, we can work to create a more just and democratic society, free from the tyranny of controlled opposition. This content is AI-generated and do not always reflect the views or opinion of this website. Thank you for watching. Support us by sharing our website and sharing this video and subscribing to our Rumble channel. See you in the next video. JL310defense.com